Ladies and gentlemen, it's David Ruff. I'm coming to you from Toronto, Canada, and we have some stories for you today. I mean, inflation is going crazy. The interest rates are rising. They are destroying the stock market, the crypto market, and now the big kahuna, the housing market. How do we fix that? That's what we're going to get into today. Let's get right into the story, you guys. Today, we're going to be looking into some of the work by Milton Friedman. He is a Nobel Prize winning economist who used to work out of the United States, out of Chicago, and he was born in like 1912. And he had a series of instructional documentaries back in the 70s and 80s. And so even though it's 40 years ago, it actually doesn't change. That's why, like, math doesn't change. 2 plus 2 is always 4. It doesn't matter what century, whether you're in Greece or Rome or wherever else. It doesn't matter what century. I always say math doesn't care about borders. So the advice that he gives is very, very simple. If you watch this documentary, I could put the link down below. A couple things that I found that really jumped out at me. Number one, all of the opposing views were sitting in one room and nobody stands up and screams at one another. They're having a good discussion. A really cool part too is I found some of the congressmen, they were leaning in and asking questions. And, that doesn't happen nowadays. It was just more civil. And the way Milton Friedman speaks, it's very matter of fact without having a political leaning one way or another. So I really liked it. And I'm wondering if you guys do too. So let's look right away into the story and let's pull up this video. And I'm going to leave the link down below. All right. So let's get into it. Let's start our first video.
The story is much the same in the United States, only the process started a little later. We've had one inflationary party after another, yet we still can't seem to avoid them. How come?
Did you notice that? He said that we've had one inflationary party after the other. It doesn't matter if you're liberal, Democrat, conservative, Republican, it doesn't matter. You guys are all spending money.
Before every election, our representatives would like to make us think we're getting a tax break. And they're able to do it while at the same time actually raising our taxes because of a bit of magic they have in their kit bag. That magic is inflation.
Did you hear that? That magic is inflation. Now, he goes on to mention that it is taxation without representation, which brings us back to like Benjamin Franklin way back in the day, right? That was the whole Boston Tea Party issues. How could you tax me without having representation? And I have to tell you, my own family members, I mentioned to them what is inflation. And they just go, I know, it's things cost more. Listen, that is just the symptom. That is not the root cause. There's people like Milton Friedman, who was an economic scientist, Nobel Prize winner, spent his entire life reading books, reading history, studying it. And he had to draw his conclusion over decades and decades of experience. But a lot of people nowadays dismiss it and they go, I know what it is. But those are the people that don't. But those are the people that are going to be hit by the train because they're not watching out. All right, so let's get into a couple other videos because this was just fascinating. Back in 1980 is when this was. Pay attention to who they are going to blame.
One group is set against another group. The social fabric of society is torn apart, inflicting scars that it will take decades to heal, and all to no avail, because wage and price controls, far from being a cure for inflation, only make inflation worse.
All right, so guys, we're going to have to break that apart. Did you notice that he said that they will pit groups against each other? And it could take decades for that to rectify itself. So this is not a quick fix, but they're always going to be pitting against some people. It could be left wing or right wing, or it could be one economic view versus another economic view. They're always going to blame somebody else when the real problem was the government itself. But it's always easy to deflect to somebody else. But did you notice in the second half what he said doesn't work? And this is where we go into it a lot, where they'll start talking about wage controls, price controls. Now, this sounds like a good thing, but you really need to unpack this. Okay, so imagine a loaf of bread went from $1 to $2 and everyone is freaking the hell out, okay? So the government comes in and says, listen, guys, we are going to make it the law that bread can't be sold for more than $2. And everyone's cheering, woo, $2 bread. Okay, it's not going up any higher. But now remember, the farmer, his costs are still going up. Fertilizer, water costs, labor costs are still going up. So the farmer ends up saying to the government, guys, I can't make any money at $2 a piece of bread. I can't do it. So he says, I'm just going to shut my farm down. And the government says, hang on a second. There is no way you can shut this farm down. We need food. So the government says, what is it going to cost you to make a loaf of bread? Tell us. And he'll say, it's $4 now. That's how much it costs me to make it. So the government will come in and say, we'll pay you the extra $2. Do you see that subsidy just happened? So now the government could be adding billions of dollars to their balance sheet, to their debt, to help pay for the bread. And at the end of the day, they froze the cost of bread because of inflation. But ironically, by freezing it, they are now causing more inflation because they're now having to borrow more money to pay the farmer. It's a vicious doom cycle, like a death cycle. So you have to be very, very careful with something like that in what you wish for, because it sounds good, but it's far from good. All right, let's jump into the next video.
Inflation is made in one place only, here in Washington. This is the only place where there are presses like this that turn out these pieces of paper we call money. This is a place where the power resides to determine how rapidly the amount of money shall increase.
So loud, eh? He's on a printing press right now, watching the money get printed. And now he slammed it shut.
What happened to all that noise? That's what would happen to inflation if we stopped letting the amount of money grow so rapidly. This is not a new idea. It's not a new cure. It's not a new problem. It's happened over and over again in history. Sometimes inflation has been cured this way on purpose. Sometimes it's happened by accident. During the Civil War, the North, late in the Civil War, overran the place in the South where the printing presses were setting up, where the pieces of paper were being turned out. Prior to that point, the South had had a very rapid inflation. If my memory serves me right, something like 4% a month. It took the Confederacy something over 2 weeks to find a new place where they could set up their printing presses and start them going again. During that 2-week period, inflation came to a halt. After the 2-week period, when the presses started running again, inflation started up again. It's that clear, that straightforward.
Whoa, that clear, that straightforward. Okay, so inflation only is from the government. It's only from printing the money. Do you remember that in the southern states? I didn't even know that. So in the southern states, when the South was fighting the North, inflation stopped for 2 weeks because they stopped their printing presses for 2 weeks. Now, I know, it gets more complicated than that, but nothing in economics is easy. Of course, if the rest of the world was burning and nobody could have any wheat exports, like the war in Ukraine, of course, that's going to put the prices up as well. But we're just talking about this in insulated incidents. When you print money, you are creating inflation. When you create inflation, you are stealing from workers, because their salaries will never go up as fast as inflation goes up. So your purchasing power becomes less and less and less over time. In addition to that, you're now moving up in your tax brackets and you get more money taken from you again. Now, this isn't unintentional. I mean, this is how it was designed. So you have to figure out how the system is designed against you to try to figure out your way out of the rat trap. But I love this guy. This is 45 years ago or something like that when he filmed this. And this is still as pertinent to us today. All right, now let's get in the next video.
In both cases, when you start drinking or when you start printing too much money, the good effects come first. The bad effects only come later. That's why, in both cases, there's a strong temptation to overdo it, to drink too much and to print too much money. When it comes to the cure, it's the other way around. When you stop drinking or when you stop printing money, the bad effects come first, and the good effects only come later. That's why it's so hard to persist with the cure.
I feel like we got to watch that a couple times, you guys. I mean, how much easier can you put it? This is the exact same thing as they call it monetary heroin, right? Because everybody wants that hit. Everybody wants some money, and everyone is waving outside of Parliament or Congress, screaming, "Give me money, give me money." But they don't realize that that is the worst thing that they can possibly do. Remember, the government is quite bloated. And so, in order for them to give $1 billion to their constituents, just to citizens, they're going to have to give $1 billion as party favors and another billion to companies and maybe another billion to companies and then give $1 billion to the citizens. So it always costs way more than what they're actually giving to the citizens. So we have to think about that. And when they print that much money, now comes the really bad part, because that is when they have the inflation going rampant. So we have to understand that part. All right, this guy is awesome. Let's get into the next video.
Excessive growth in money supply is an essential element in the inflationary process, and that the real problem is not what to do, but how to have the courage and the will to do it. And I want to go and start, if I may, on that subject.
Did you notice that? He said it's very, very important for you to pick up on that. It is a necessary thing to create inflation, but it's not a necessary thing that we should do. Listen again.
Excessive growth in money supply is an essential element in the inflationary process.
It is an essential part for the inflationary process for the money supply to expand, meaning money printing, meaning government giving away a lot of money. So he's not saying this is a positive thing, okay?
The real problem is not what to do, but how to have the courage and the will to do it. And I want to go and start.
So he says the idea here is not to figure out how to fix the problem. That's not the issue here. We know exactly how to fix the problem. The government has to be smaller and they have to spend less money. But that is not a popular answer. So just imagine that you were like a single mom with 2 kids, or I don't know, it doesn't matter if you're a family. If you cost you $2,000 a month to live, but you spend 4,000, eventually you're going to run out of money and there's going to be problems. Now, having to pay off your debt is not going to be fun, but we have to end up getting there at one point. So it's not figuring out what to do, it's having the courage and the will to do it. And politically, since we went through the 60s and 70s, around then, and then more and more, especially since 2009 in the US, now all that money is spent to buy votes. So now, if you don't spend the money to buy votes, you're out of power automatically. So we're now in this vicious doom circle again. All right, let's get back to Milton.
And I'm trying to observe phenomena, and I observe that every Federal Reserve chairman says one thing and does another. I don't mean he does.
So I boiled down, guys, like an hour or something like that documentary in just a couple clips. But did you notice that it doesn't matter what side, left or right? Nobody ever says what they're planning to do. I just find that so funny because, I mean, that's the world that we live in today, right? That nobody ever says what they plan to do. I kind of find it's very symbolic. And nowadays, nobody seems to want to say it, right? No one's ever out there screaming for inflation, right? And everyone always says, oh, we're going to do the right thing. But they always end up doing the same thing. And this is where our brains kind of they break a little bit, because when somebody is saying words to you like, oh, I love you, you're the best, I'm going to protect you, and then at the same time they beat you, right? There's a hard part in our brains because what you're saying doesn't match your actions. So when you have this problem, when your brain doesn't match your actions, your words and actions, you have to trust only the actions. So forget what the politicians say, follow what the politicians do. All right, let's get back to the next video.
Has been going up rapidly. Republican administration or Democratic administration. This is a nonpartisan issue. It doesn't matter. Right. Government deficits have been going up rapidly. Republican administration or Democratic administration. Why is it that here again you have the difference between pronouncements and performance? There is no congressman, no senator who will come out and say, I am in favor of inflation. There's
Nobody.
Not a single one who will say, I am in favor of big deficits. They'll all say, we want to balance the budget, we want to hold down spending, we want an economical government. How do you explain the difference between performance and talk on the side of Congress?
Well, first, I think we have to make one point. I'm not so much with the government as I am against it.
Of course, they're always going to have something. But do you notice that it doesn't matter if it's left or right? It doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat, Canada's liberal and conservative. It doesn't really matter. The debt is always going up. And there's that bifurcation between what you say and what you do. So be careful with that. All right, Milty, let's get into the next one.
More fun to give away things than it is to withhold them. And
There it is, man. There's the whole reason. Why do they keep printing money? Say it again, buddy.
more fun to give away things than it is to withhold them.
Amen.
And this is the reason that the Congress responds to a general public that says, well, I want you to cut everybody else's program, but the one in which I'm most particularly interested, save money. But incidentally, my wife is taking care of the orphanages, and so let's try to help the orphanages or whatever it is. Let me try to make a point, if I can, however.
So this guy, he was actually a congressman, I believe. This guy, do you notice that they always are very, very quick because they say they want to cut everybody else's taxes, but don't adjust my life in any way. I want you to still give money to me, but cut everybody else. And this is a big, big problem, right? And why is that? And he says, because the government, it's always more fun to hand things out for free, right? Than to say no. And so this is the problem that we're having in the government. But I really like this conversation. I think everyone should go watch the whole thing, but I really condensed the whole hour down to some really cool parts. All right, next one.
Our whole tax structure is built on the Depression. The idea of the tax structure in the past has been to get the money out of the mattress where it went after the banks failed in this country and jobs were lost, and out of the woodshed or the tin box in the backyard, get it out of there and put it into circulation, get it moving, get things going. And one of the ways to do that was to encourage inflation, because if you held on to it, the money would depreciate.
Did you hear that? Did you hear how do they get you to spend? This is the same thing in the 30s or today. It's exactly the same thing. They deliberately want inflation. Listen to that.
Inflation. Because things going. And one of the ways to do that was to encourage inflation.
Encourage.
Because if you held on to it, the money would depreciate. And the other way was to tax it away from people and let the government spend it. Now there's a reaction to that. And people are beginning to say, wait, just a minute, we're not afflicted.
Did you hear that? I had to play it twice, you guys. It is deliberately designed that they have inflation, because if you can put the money in the bank and just keep it there, you're incentivized to keep it there for a long time. But if you know that the money is slowly decaying, slowly having a cancerous tumor eating at it, and it's disappearing, and they do that to you just enough, you're going to go out and spend it because you know everything is going to be more expensive next year. So you're incentivized to spend it. So they do that deliberately. But remember what he just said. If you are having inflation, everyone just kind of goes and spends it. It doesn't say much. But if you tax somebody, all of a sudden they have a negative reaction to that. Governments aren't stupid. They know that the inflation is a tax on you, but it's a tax that is too complicated for most people to understand. And so they just live with it. That's just how life is. But if there was a tax on you, it'd be very, very different, right? I mean, this is really telling. This is 1980. All right.
Who have been able to vote higher spending without having to vote higher taxes.
You hear that?
Who have been able to vote higher spending without having to vote higher taxes.
That is the way that all of the governments operate. They want higher spending, but not more taxes. Everybody wants everything for free. The government is like an eternal horn of plenty, and that's how they view it, right? But it's impossible for you to keep having endless amounts of money. It's going to come and bite you. But like we learned from Milton before, right? It happens really quick. You get drunk really quick and the hangovers later. So when we print a lot of money, inflation doesn't hit right away through the pandemic. It takes a little bit of time for it to really start burning through. So this is very, very important.
But you have never had a congressman on record to that effect. It's the government civil servants.
Okay, yeah. So he's saying never before has there ever been somebody on record, a congressman or something, that jumps up there and goes, I'm in favor of inflation. Have you ever seen that? I'm in favor of inflation. You get voted out in like 2 seconds. It's so funny. Okay, next guy.
It's not because of the way you spend your money. Inflation doesn't arise because you got consumers who are spendthrift. They've always been spendthrift. It doesn't arise because you've got the businessmen who are greedy. They've always been greedy. Inflation arises because we as citizens have been asking you as politicians to perform an impossible task. We've been asking you to spend somebody else's money on us, but not to spend our money on anybody else.
You don't want us to cut back those dollars for education, right?
I think you guys have to hear that. Again, you are the problem. I am the problem.
Have been asking you as politicians to perform an impossible task. We've been asking you to spend somebody else's money on us, but not to spend our money on anybody else.
You don't.
That is why in that speech, he actually mentions that it's the man in the mirror. It's you, it's me, it's all of us, because we are very quick to say, yes, you should pay. Yes, you should pay to the government. But a government has to take money from one person in order to give it to another person. They can't really just create it. They're taking it from somebody and giving it to somebody else. Inflation is doing that as well. It's taxing everybody, but it disproportionately helps some people and it hurts other people. So they're still taking it from them, but everybody wants the money and nobody ever wants to be taxed. So it's very kind of a look inside, to see where this comes from.
Before we can effectively implement what you call a tough policy that takes courage. I think that the man in the mirror has to come to recognize that inflation is the most destructive disease known to modern societies. There is nothing which will destroy a society so thoroughly and so fully as letting inflation run riot.
This is so poignant. I think you have to listen to this again.
Nothing which will destroy a society so thoroughly and so fully as letting inflation run riot. He must come to recognize that he doesn't have any good choices, that there are no easy answers. And once you get in this situation where the economy is sick of this insidious disease, there's going to be no miracle drug which will enable him to be well tomorrow. That the only choices he has, do I go through a tough period for 4 or 5 years of relatively high unemployment, relatively low growth, or do I try to push it off by taking some more of the hair of the dog that bit me and get around it now at the cost of still higher unemployment, as Clarence Brown said?
I think that we have to break this up, guys. Just so we're going to listen to that. He is saying there's nothing more dangerous than inflation to destroy an entire civilization. There's nothing more dangerous than that. That is a big problem, is inflation and what it's going to do, right? And he says there's no easy answers here. There's none. They're all going to be bad. Now, you can take some pain now or a lot of pain later. And then what is your answer to that?
Later on, the only choice this country faces is whether we have temporary unemployment for a short period as a side effect of curing inflation, or whether we go into a period of still higher unemployment later on and have it to do all over again. That's the only choice we face. And when the public at large recognizes that, they will then elect people to Congress, a president to office, who is committed to less government spending and to less government printing of money. And until that happens, we will not cure inflation.
So, Dr. Friedman, let me...
Did you hear all that? I mean, that's a lot to take in, right? But there's nothing worse to destroy civilization, destroy a country, than rampant inflation. And you only have two choices, right? And the choice is to have a little pain now for, like, who knows, a year or two, or massive pain later. And this is filmed in 1980. So we've been kicking the can farther and farther and farther and farther down the road. I have friends and family who have had problems with alcohol in the past, and they'll drink heavily one night, and the morning comes and they're like, oh, I have a hangover, and drink again. And they're just pushing it off. But that hangover is coming and it's going to be a doozy, right? So this is very predictable. We never know what the government is going to do as far as interest rates. That's the question mark. But we know exactly what's going to happen when the interest rate changes. If they lower interest rate, we know that home prices are going to go through the roof. Spending is going to go through the roof. We know that. And if they raise the interest rates, we already know home prices will come crashing down. 1% interest rate hike is 10% of your home. Whammo, right away. So we know what's going to happen. The question mark here is which way the governments are going to go. That's the question mark. All right. I think there's only two more.
And that is a confusion between spending and taxes. The real tax on the American people is not what you label taxes. It's total spending. If Congress spends $50 billion more than it takes in, if government spends $50 billion, who do you suppose pays that $50 billion?
Of course.
The Arab sheiks aren't paying it. Santa Claus isn't paying it. The Tooth Fairy isn't paying it. You and I, as taxpayers, are paying it indirectly through hidden taxation. And therefore, the crucial thing is to cut down total government spending from the point of view of inflation. From the point of view of productivity, some of the other measures you were talking about are...
So let's just pause. Did you hear right there? When the government overspends, it's going to come back to bite us, period. He says Santa Claus isn't coming to pay for it, right? So total government spending's got to go down as far as inflation. Okay, now this is the second point.
Some of the other measures you were talking about are far more
But
important.
if you can see that inflation and taxes are both part and parcel of the same thing, and if you cut
They're
spending,
not part and parcel of the same thing.
if you cut spending, but you take the money from them in one way or another. The average.
Did you hear that? Taxes and inflation are the same thing. This is a congressman that you're taking money from people. It's the exact same thing. And people don't understand that.
They're not part and parcel of the same thing.
If you cut spending, but you take the money from them in one way or another. The average citizen.
Absolutely.
To finance the growth of government. So
Absolutely.
if you cut back the size of government, you can cut both their inflation and their taxes.
That's right.
If you,
I am all in favor of that.
all right.
All I am
one
saying
other
is
way
don't kid yourself into thinking that there is some painless way to do it. There just is not.
One other way is productivity. If you can increase production, then the impact of inflation is less because you have more goods chasing.
Absolutely, but you have to have a sense of proportion.
Oh, man, there is so much to unpack there, you guys. Like, do you see how he says, oh, well, even the congressman, it's the same thing. We're going to get money from them one way or another in order to grow government. I mean, it just blows my mind. This isn't like random people. He operated at a high level, Nobel Prize winner. He ran his whole area of the Chicago University. This is congressman who's sitting in there talking with them. If you watched it, it actually has where he's sitting with other finance ministers from Germany and stuff. It just blows my mind that it's out there. And this is the good thing. I guess people want to know that it's hard, I think, but it doesn't have to be hard. If you just watch this video I put in the link below, I mean, it's going to open your eyes, and you don't have to go to college. You just have to understand a little bit that money is like ice cubes and they're just melting in the sun and getting smaller and smaller. Like my grandfather used to work for $1 a day, and now what is $1? You can't do anything with $1. So it's the value of the dollar that has been disappearing. I think since the dollar started, like 96% of it is gone as far as purchasing power. Like $1 today would be equivalent of 4 cents back when the dollar was created. Unbelievable.
And that way is not available. That way is to make it credible to the American people that you are really going to follow the policy you say you're going to follow. Unfortunately, I don't see any way we can do that.
That's exactly.
I had to put that in. I just find it so funny. Okay. The only way this is going to happen, number one, before like have the will and courage to do it. But if you actually follow through with what you're going to say, all he's saying is that you got to be honest. Okay, so there's crooked politicians everywhere, whatever country you go to, and we're just so used to this BS all the time that he's like, all you have to do is just follow through with what you're going to say. Because every politician always says, we want to balance the budget, you guys. We're going to cut spending, you guys. Don't worry about it. We got inflation under control, but it never happened. So he's just saying, just do what you say, guys. That's it. That is our friend Milton Friedman. The guy, to me, is a legend. Now, we have seen all different types of economies that come by, from Marxist and communist on one side, and that's very socialist programs, all the way to dictatorships. And we have full democracies. And there's also free market capitalism, which is very different than the capitalism that we have. So capitalism in Canada is kind of where businesses work, but it has this really strong undertow of a lot of socialism that happens. They're trying to balance the best of both worlds. But in the past decades, we've seen as governments have just been moving more and more toward that socialist agenda. Now, the whole idea behind some stuff is generally two schools of thought. Okay. So you'll hear Keynesian, which was another famous economist, or you can have Austrian economics. You try to look for somebody who's right down the center of the road, who doesn't really have feelings about it one way or another. But the one camp is usually called a supply side economics, and the other is demand. All economies, it doesn't matter what economy it is, it's always supply and demand. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that a bottle of water is only going to cost you 50 cents because there's so much water around. You can just pour it out of a tap, they put it in a bottle. It's very, very cheap to do so. So why is something like a diamond expensive? I got to go dig it out of the ground, and gas and dynamite and labor and all this stuff, right, to get it. They're a lot more rare. So the price is going to go up. So it's how it goes. Now, the supply side of the economic field is, if we need oranges, let's say, and everybody really wants to eat oranges for whatever reason, well, the government is going to go and try to help more people plant orange groves so that they can have more oranges to feed to people. That'll help bring the price of oranges down if they help them provide the supply of oranges. The other side, this is where helicopter money comes in. So instead of the government helping them make the oranges, their idea is just to send checks to everybody's house. And if they send checks to everyone's houses and they cash it in the bank, then they can stand outside and say, we want oranges, we want oranges. And hopefully some businessmen will come and see all that demand of people who are asking for oranges and try and go plant them. But that takes a lot longer, that process, if it was just oranges, right? Because he'd have to see it and go then now figure out how to make the plant. The crazy part is nowadays, let's say Elon Musk, for example, Elon Musk is making these new robots, humanoids. They're supposed to be able to come in your house and clean your house and do stuff and do chores for you. So, it doesn't matter if the government went and mailed out $1 million to every human today, and they all just stood outside screaming at Elon Musk, we want robots, we want robots. I mean, it's not going to happen in 2 seconds, right? It takes time to build this stuff. We need to build it first and focus on supply. So to bring down inflation, we had a choice, right? Inflation first was created because we printed 50% of all the money in existence came in place since COVID started, which is absolutely mind-blowing, right? The States, 250 years, Canada, I don't even know, 150 years. All of that time, we doubled it in just like over 2 years, which is crazy. So that's where the inflation came from. So the only ways to bring inflation down is either to grow a lot of oranges, and bring the price of orange juice down, or they call it demand destruction, by making the price so high of orange juice that nobody will buy it anymore. And that's what you get. And that's what we're having now, where the world in Sri Lanka, over in the Netherlands, in Canada, we're moving forward on some agendas to destroy the demand for the product. So they're going to make it so expensive that you're just going to forget about drinking orange juice. I'm just picking on orange juice for no reason, right? I mean, it's back and forth. Try to look for somebody who's kind of like down the middle. I really like Milton Friedman, but I'm wondering, who do you like? I've asked a million people, what kind of economists they like, and nobody ever kind of researches it. I'm kind of a nerd. I read out on that stuff. I watch stuff, but this is from the 80s. I really liked it. They had a good discussion back and forth, and I'm wondering if you'd read it too, if you'd like it. Listen, you guys, I'm going to be here every week, and I go on lives on TikTok all the time. I'd really appreciate it if you could just send this to one person that you think this could help. And please don't forget, right? Show me some love. We put a lot of time into making them. Like this video, subscribe for more, and I'll see you on the next video. I love you guys.